Welcome to the Redbird Report, your destination for the latest on the St. Louis Cardinals. Here are your hosts, BK and T-Bone.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We are back in the big studio because there's no breaking news today. The Cardinals, the deadline has come and went. They still have most of the players that they had last time that we talked to you guys, which is great, except for Nolan Arenado. He's on the injured list now, which is wonderful. He's down in Jupiter. He's going to be getting some work in on his shoulder over the coming days and maybe weeks. We'll see on all of that. T-Bone, the Cardinals just won 2 out of 3 games against the Dodgers. They were competitive for the most part against the San Diego Padres. And unfortunately, given where we're at in the season, that just doesn't really rate for us. Yeah. It doesn't register. I liked what I saw from them against the Dodgers. The new look bullpen, mostly really solid. Let's just, wave away what took place on Tuesday night, but otherwise pretty good.
We'll find out which one they didn't like with their waiver claim today. We'll talk about later.
Good point. When I look at where the Cardinals are at right now, it's still this runway season. We continue to talk about that, and the final 2 months are going to be defined by it. And yet, they're in a really interesting spot with Jordan Walker, who was the face of the runway season coming into it, and to me at least, remains the face of it as we enter the final 2 months. I really like following a guy by the name of Kareem. He's over on Twitter. He's at KareemSSN. And he tweeted the following today, and it'll kind of be the backdrop to our conversation that I want to have, T-Bone. He said, quote, Jordan Walker has shown nothing over the past 2 years to necessitate a runway. I'm not saying that his story is already written as a 23-year-old, but at some point, he has to perform. Even his recent hot stretch doesn't feel real. His mishits are just finding holes. He then asked this on Twitter in a poll. Should Jordan Walker be penciled in as the starting outfielder for the Cardinals in 2026? So far, there's been about 1,000 votes, and 60% of the responses from Cardinals fans say yes, he should be penciled in as a starter next year. T-Bone, he's been better. In his last 16 games, this is dating back to July 19th, Jordan Walker is batting .310. He's getting on base 36% of the time. He has an OPS nearing 800. Those are all really good numbers. I would sign up for any of those at the end of the season for Jordan Walker. Here's the problem. All of the underlying stuff screams, this is not sustainable. He's still hitting it on the ground 55% of the time. He's not hitting the ball any harder than he did previously. It's back to the average of his regular season results thus far. And do you know what his batting average on balls in play is so far?
I have no idea what to guess.
For any of you that are saying, hey, nerd, what's that even mean? What's it matter? Batting average on balls in play is when you hit it, how often does it become a hit? When you put it in play, how often does it become a hit? For Jordan Walker, in this stretch of games where he has, again, a .310 batting average, 43% of the time that the ball goes in play, it is resulting in a hit for him. To say that is unsustainable would be wildly understating things.
Yeah.
So, T-Bone, what's the plan? What's the plan in the outfield? How should or does Jordan Walker's recent uptick in traditional metrics play into these decisions? How do you view the way that Ollie Marmol is going to construct this thing?
Yeah, I think you have to try and get Walker in the lineup as much as possible. And I know right now, the way it looks early on in the early returns of this current logjam is it looks like it's going to be kind of 2 on, maybe 2 off, or 2 on, day off, something along those lines. I want Walker playing as much as possible. And I know that means I'm potentially benching Lars Nootbaar for a little stretch here, but to me, he is the one guy, when we're talking about runway for the St. Louis Cardinals, I still don't know much about what Jordan Walker is. I think when you're thinking about this outfield mix, Walker has to be put in there as if he has performed, even though he hasn't. He has to be put in there to me because he is the number one guy that I just think there is such a wide range of outcomes that you don't know what to expect from him anymore. Like you think about Alec Burleson, for example, who played. I have a good sense as to what he is. I think I've got a good sense as to what Ivan Herrera is going to be for the Cardinals. Donovan, Wynn, all these guys. The one I can't even tell you any idea what I think he's going to be yet is Jordan Walker. And that's why you have to find a way to get him playing time and consistently and a lot of it. And I know, like, we had the conversation on the show earlier this week of, well, does it matter if it's 5 games in a 7-day stretch compared to 6 games in a 7-day stretch. Yeah, the more at-bats I can get him, the more I want to do, because that adds an extra like 40 plate appearances for the final stretch of the regular season. So to me, you have to get him into this lineup, because I want to know if this is just a mirage that we're seeing. Because as much as we talked about it, we've seen a stretch similar to this earlier in the year where he was hitting well, looked like he was taking better at-bats, and just like that, he reverted right back to the old guy that he was, where he chases that slider low and away. So these final 2 months are huge for their evaluation and figuring out what they have in Walker.
That is one thing that's been better. He has been striking out a little less than he had been previously. Like the strikeout rate has gone down, and that's noteworthy and commendable, and something that needed to happen in order to allow for the rest of this to be possible. But man, I just like, at what point do we know? How many at-bats do you have to have before you say, you know what, maybe this is kind of what Jordan Walker is going to be? I don't think we're there yet. I don't. I'm with you, T-Bone. I think he needs to play as often as humanly possible. I am a little lower on this. Like, if you're playing 6 games a week on average the rest of the way, which is kind of where they're at this point in the season, if he plays in 4 to 5 of them on average, you get him 1 to 2 days off per week the rest of the way, I think you'll be able to get a decent enough playing time that you feel pretty good. You kind of know what he's going to be. But that would mean, the rest of the way, if he's playing 40 games, 40 of the next 48 or whatever it is, I probably am okay with that. I think that's probably enough. That gets you roughly 110 games this season, and it probably gets you 400-ish at-bats over the course of the regular season. That'll mean he's up to 1,000 at-bats in his career. That's a decent sample size, man. Like, there comes a certain point in time where you look at it, you're like, okay, in 1,000 at-bats, you have continued to regress. You get worse every season of your major league career. Your slugging percentage went from 445 to 366 to this year 319. At a certain point in time, we kind of have to look at this and say, I don't know, maybe to that question that Kareem asked, maybe he is a 4th outfielder going into next season. And you just have him start the season where Burleson was this year, where, hey, you're going to get occasional playing time, but we can't guarantee you anything. And if you start to hit, you'll get more opportunities. But until that happens, we can't promise you anything. That, to me, is what the next 2 months are all about. But I can't do that at the complete expense of Alec Burleson, who's earned this opportunity, of Ivan Herrera, who absolutely needs to be in the lineup every day. Or, to me, I would also have Lars Nootbaar as a guy that I'm still giving some playing time to, at least a couple, 2 to 3 days a week, maybe a split time between him and Victor Scott. And I need to see all of those guys, because Newt also has trade value. And if I'm going to try to trade him in the offseason, I'm not just going to bench him for a 2-month stretch now in August and September.
Yeah, and that's what makes this tough. I think, though, it's benching to an extent. Like, I think you get him more playing time in center field, Lars Nootbaar. Victor Scott's clearly going through it offensively.
No
Just
doubt.
get him some time, play Nootbaar out there. Your defense doesn't matter at this point in the season. Look, I know they're trying to win every game. It's the job of the manager and the players to go out there and try and do that. But I also can be a realist and look at this and say, yeah, you guys, it's not about the wins and losses right now. It's more about just finding these at-bats. And if that means I get more at-bats for Newt, well, quote-unquote, benching him and creating an opportunity for Walker, I think they're going to get stuck in the offseason of they're not going to get what they want for Nootbaar no matter what they try to do. And the reason I say that is if I'm another team, I'm not giving the Cardinals what they want if Lars Nootbaar's the guy you're trading, because I know you have to move him. You have just created such a roster logjam that I'm going to call your bluff. You're a fish in a barrel right now. I've got you where I want you when it comes to making these kind of trades.
I disagree with that, and I'll explain why. There are going to be multiple teams that want Lars Nootbaar. So it becomes a bit of a bidding war, because Newt is while Cardinals fans have grown frustrated with what they get out of him, he's still a valuable commodity, man. He's a left-handed bat that's above average defensively, above average as a base runner, is above average slightly as a hitter still at this point in his career, has multiple years of control remaining, and is at a more than reasonable price. So when you have all of those different things that come together, yes, the Cardinals need to trade him this offseason, but there is not a no trade clause attached to him or anything like that. There could be 5 or 6 teams that are bidding on the services of Lars Nootbaar. So I don't think this is a scenario where the Cardinals are going to get very little in return. This could be a situation where they still get, market value for Lars Nootbaar, not because teams think that the Cardinals are going to keep him or anything like that, but because teams know this is a valuable commodity that we would like to acquire. The other thing that I do think is relevant here, they don't have to trade Newt. They could decide, you know what, we get a better package in return for Alec Burleson, who I don't personally want to trade, but if you get a great return for him, I'm willing to listen to offers on that. They could trade Jordan Walker. Again, I wouldn't do it, but if you have somebody that's willing to buy on what is a low asset right now, but they're willing to spend a little bit more because they still believe in what he's going to be as a player, you could make that move. Brendan Donovan is a guy that we've talked about that, again, I wouldn't trade him. Could they do it this offseason? Sure. So they've got other moves that could alleviate some of the logjam with the roster. And this is what I wanted to talk about next, because Chaim Bloom, we had heard previously from John Mozeliak, hey, Chaim Bloom is going to take over starting that transition in August. And then it'll be his team by the time that we get to October. Okay, I'm going to look back at Chaim Bloom's last team to see what does this look like typically when he takes over as a general manager of a team. So I looked back to the 2020 Boston Red Sox. That was the first year that he took over as the president of baseball operations there. T-Bone, there were 2 players that played on the 2020 Boston Red Sox that remain on the team today, neither of whom are on the active roster today. One of them is hurt. The other is currently down in the minor leagues. So let's go back, fast forward a couple of years. The 2022 Red Sox. Now he's been in charge in Boston for a couple of seasons. He's been able to make some of his moves. Some of his young guys that have come into the system are now reaching the big league level. 2022 Red Sox had 5 position players that remain on the roster today. Those guys are Trevor Story, long-term contract that he had, Jarren Duran, Tristan Casas, who's injured right now, Connor Wong, and Rob Refsnyder. I
think that's how you say it.
He's like a utility guy for them.
Yeah.
They had 5 pitchers as well, 2 relievers, 3 guys that are starters for them that are still around the Boston Red Sox today. I want to hone in on the position player side of things. If you had to bet today on which 5 Cardinals position players will still be with the team 3 years from now, who would you be placing your bets on? T-Bone, I'm going to allow you to put JJ Weatherholt into this mix, but otherwise use the 40-man roster. JJ could reach the big leagues by the end of the season, so he might otherwise still be in consideration for this. But 5 players on the roster today that you think will be on the roster 3 years from now under Chaim Bloom.
And I got to get to 5 or I can go less?
You got to get to 5.
Okay, I would go Herrera 1.
I have him on my list.
I would go Burleson 2.
I have him on my list.
I would go Win 3.
I have him on my list.
Along with Weatherholt 4.
I have him on my list.
And then, boy, the 5th one is hard for me.
Do you want me to give you mine?
I'll go Scott as my 5th.
We have the same list.
Yeah. I thought about Pages. I could see where maybe they changed that up. I didn't go Donovan. But yeah, I think that's probably the 5.
The 5 players I think will be on the roster 3 years from now, just as the Boston Red Sox had 5 players that were on the roster 3 years after the 2022 season. Ivan Herrera, JJ Weatherholt, Mason Wynn, Alec Burleson, Victor Scott II. I did not mention Brendan Donovan. I did not mention Wilson Contreras or Lars Nootbaar or Nolan Gorman or Thomas Saggese or Jordan Walker. What does that mean for this offseason, dude? The fact that we have so many players on this team, and you said it, you have 4 that you feel pretty confident in. I would actually go with 3 that I feel confident in. Herrera, Weatherholt, and Wynn, and I'm mostly confident on Wynn. I'm not 100% of the way there on Wynn either.
I actually am more on like 2. I was at 4 to where like I can say it and not like have to really think about it as to how you get there. But the only 2 that I am like super confident in are Herrera and Weatherholt. I'm not sure on Burley. I can see a scenario where they decide, hey, Weatherholt's a shortstop, so then they move Mason Wynn rather than moving him over to, like, say, second base. There's probably more value in trading him because he's a younger shortstop, cost control, can of an arm. Still, there's potential for upside in his offense, so there's probably more value in moving him than moving him to second base. The only 2 that I feel like super confident in, and that's why I asked, do I have to get to 5, would be Ivan Herrera and JJ Weatherholt. But to your point of what does that mean for their offseason, to me, it means they gotta start making decisions, and they gotta go not quickly on these, but it is about time that we have finally gotten to where all of these decisions of holding on and like protecting them like they're are like puppies or something. It is now time to set them free and send them off and go and get some assets in return for this. Because if you don't want to be in a rebuild for 4 to 5 years, then you got to start going out here, moving some of these pieces and knowing that there are some that are going to hurt. Potentially. You trade Nolan Gorman, he could hit 30 bombs for somebody and be someone that's playing in October that Cardinals fans are pointing at going, well, why do we get rid of that guy and not get the most out of him? You know what? It wasn't going to work here. We didn't have a spot for him here. We had to make a move and bring in some kind of pitching or reinforcements into the minor league level.
So, T-Bone, I had a 2006 Honda Accord that I used to drive. This is not that long ago. This is like 3 years ago. So it was an older car, right? It was at like 170,000 miles on it. And I knew there's going to come a point in time where like, I'm going to have to get a new car. I'm going to have to do something a little different here. And I kept wanting to drive. It's paid off, right? It's not costing me anything on a month-to-month basis. But there came a point in time where it was like, man, I'm throwing more money at this every month. Like there's something new that goes wrong. The starter, need new tires. There's something going wrong with the transmission. And there comes a certain point in time where you're like, I just have to cut my losses. Mm-hmm. It makes more sense for me to go get something new that I don't know if it's going to work out better or worse. There's a scenario where I'm going to buy a used car and it's going to be a worse situation than what I currently have with my 06 Honda Accord that I've had for the last decade, right? At least I know what has gone wrong with this thing and I know how it's been driven. I know the history of this car. If I go get a new one, could go worse. Could go better though. Could also end up with me spending less on a regular basis than what I'm currently throwing at this asset that is a sunk cost. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna sell this thing. I'm gonna get nothing for it. I got like $1,500. I mean, it was nothing, right? But I'm gonna go get a new used car, and that's gonna be the way that I go. Now, knock on wood, fingers crossed here, but it's been a much better proposition for me. That's where the Cardinals have arrived. They've got a car that they still see some value in. And it's comfortable. It's reliable. They know what the warts are with it. But the problem is in the like 12 cars that they have collected here, they all have dings and dents and problems. And under the hood, things aren't necessarily what you'd like to see. It is time to trade some of these things in, man. Try something new. That doesn't mean that it's going to work out great, but it could. And if you do enough of those deals over time, if you're good at it, if you have the right evaluators in place, and we just have to trust that they do now, you're going to get a return on that investment. So I do think this is an offseason where I fully anticipate Chaim Bloom being extremely active. That doesn't mean the traditional sense where he's going to go out and sign some big name player. Like, I don't think they're going to be in the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes. I don't think they're going to be in the Kyle Schwarber sweepstakes, which are going to be wild. That guy might get like $30 or $40 million a year on a multi-year contract at this point in time.
Just a DH.
He's going to hit like 400 or 500 home runs in his career. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. He's going to be a Hall of Famer potentially. Anyways, I don't think they're going to be in those conversations. But they should be in every conversation that there's a trade made available. Like if Joe Ryan's out there this offseason, they should be in those conversations. If there's another like 1, 2, or 3 starter that becomes available.
The Cabrera kid in Miami.
They should be in on those. They should be in on like Sandy Alcantara if he was 3 years younger and $10 million cheaper. Be in on that pitcher, whoever that may be this offseason. Position players too. This doesn't mean you have to be out of that market. No, you can consolidate. You can trade 3 for 1, where you think you're getting the best player in the deal. So it should be a hugely active offseason for Chaim Bloom. And I'm fascinated to see which pieces he believes in, because I don't think that we have that answer yet. We don't know how he views Mason Wynn or Burleson or Herrera or Donovan or Nootbaar or Gorman. Like we just don't know. And it remains to be seen which ones they're going to be willing to bet on.
And the answer could be he doesn't believe in any of the pieces, and he's starting anew, and it's just going to take him a couple of years to get that new core in place. Now, Weather Holt will be a part of his core because he was here and oversaw the minor leagues at that point, but I would assume he was also involved in those conversations on that draft pick. But to your point on, hey, look, they just got to start cashing in some of these chips right now. That has been the problem for John Mozeliak in the final, 3-4 years of his tenure here. He got too scared to deal. I think the Arozarena trade, the Ozuna trade, I think they shook him too much to the point where he got, hey, we know what, we're going to hang on to these. We're going to hang on to these until we feel confident in what we are actually making a move on. And the actual answer is when you probably have the right answer on what you're trading away when it's not that valuable. That's what has happened to the Cardinals. Look at Dylan Carlson. Look what happened to Tyler O'Neill, where they kind of came in, we're like, hey, yeah, okay, had a great year. Are we going to cash in on this? We're going to keep this guy around. Okay, we're going to keep him around. Boom, falls off a cliff, and then you trade him away for two guys that I don't even believe are in the organization.
They both got DFA
anymore. So right there, you look at that, and it's okay. They're just too slow to make these decisions on these. And my hope, this is my biggest hope of whether it be this offseason or what we'll see over the next 3 years under Chaim Bloom. They're willing to make these decisions fast, even if there is a chance that they lose on one or two of these trades, but they make the decision fast. And if they're making a fast decision, it makes me believe in their internal kind of scouting department of what they are doing, that they believe that their player evaluation is back where it should be.
He's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got the Redbird Report. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Coming up next, speaking of making decisions and moving on from sunk costs, is it time for the Cardinals to consider flipping Miles Mikolas and Kyle Leahy in their current roles? We'll talk about that next here on the Redbird Report. All right, we're back here on the Redbird Report. Is it time for the Cardinals to consider flipping Mikolas and Leahy? T-Bone, I think this is something that's gained some traction on the internet over the last 24, 48 hours or so. I want to say this on the front end. I don't think it's going to be. Whether we think it is something they should consider or not, I don't think it is something they will consider, because I think this is ultimately an ownership call. I think that the ownership is probably making a decision of, we're paying him $18 million. We're not doing that for him to go out there and pitch 1 to 2 innings and mop up duty over the next 2 months. That being said, we could talk theoretically speaking on whether or not it should be something they consider, and let's go ahead and do that right now.
We're more of a theoretical podcast anyways.
No doubt. I understand everybody who says, I don't want to see Miles Mikolas pitch for this team anymore. It's a runway season. This is supposed to be a transition. He's 36 years old. He's a free agent after this year. He's not going to be a part of the roster in 2026. There is no real value in him making these starts right now. I agree with all of that. No issues whatsoever with that line of thinking. However, there is a second piece to that. Okay, so if he stops starting these games, somebody has to. You're going to have 5 starters that are making starts for you. Who is that guy? And so you go down to the minor league system, because that's typically where you would pull from of the next guy in line. You already pulled from that, though. Michael McGreevy was that 6th starter who's now already been inserted into the mix. The other options are Aaron Wilkerson, who's also 36 years old. He's the same age as Miles Mikolas. There's no upside there. That's not a good idea. You could go Curtis Taylor, who's 30 or 31 years old. He was brought into the organization from an independent league. If you want to go that route, I'm not going to argue kicking and screaming that you shouldn't. He's been relatively effective this season. He's got some interesting stuff. Fine. I'm good with it, I suppose. I don't know what the real upside is there, or the likelihood of it becoming anything more than a 2 to 3 week trial, if we're being honest. And the other one that we should throw into the mix here, which is getting some buzz, is Quinn Matthews. No, it's not a good idea.
You're not ready.
He's had 1 good start in the last 2 months. Other than that, I think it's 30 innings, 30 walks prior to his last start. That's not a profile that's going to work at the big league level. He's too good of a prospect to have him come up here and fail like that. There's no value in it, right? He's already feeling at AAA. Yeah. Allow him to learn down there before he gets his teeth kicked in at the big league level. The one option that I'm not only willing to listen to, but I've actually kind of convinced myself it is the right option, is stretching out Kyle Leahy to become a starter for the St. Louis Cardinals. This is a guy that Ollie Marmol has said multiple times now, he has the arsenal to become a starter. I know Dusty Blake has also said, we think he could become a starter for the Cardinals. He, in his last outing, Kyle Leahy, went 2 2/3 innings. He threw 31 pitches, which is the first sign of, hey, maybe they're considering stretching this guy out. He got up to 50 pitches about 3 weeks ago now. Maybe they're going to do that again. I could not only be convinced of it, I think it's a pretty smart idea to flip their roles. I don't know how likely that is, though, T-Bone. Do you like the idea of Leahy getting a runway here over the next 6+ weeks to be a starter for the Cardinals?
Yeah, I do. The Cardinals, they've brought up the idea of maybe we have to monitor his innings. I think they were probably asked about it, so they kind of went with the chalk answer there. If Kyle Leahy thinks his body's good, man, I would make this switch. And for ownership's concerns about us having to pay him to be a bullpen arm, first off, he's probably going to throw multiple innings for the first couple times Leahy's starting in this build-up process. But I think the thing for me on the Leahy thing is, man, why would you not use the final 2 months to find out, not answers, but give you an idea on some answers, get some data points on whatever questions you might have. Is this stuff on Jordan Walker real? I don't know. Let's find out for the final 2 months. Kyle Leahy, can he be a starter if we stretch him out? He has 6 different pitches that he uses, which Matthew Liberatore has 6 different pitches which he used, which is why they thought he could translate into a starter coming into this season.
Part of the problem for Palante is that he only has 2, sometimes 3 pitches that he utilizes.
And the problem for Palante is he can't get out righties. For Leahy, his splits this year, 524 OPS against right-handed batters, a 676 OPS against left-handed batters. So lefties are a little bit better, but 676 is not a great OPS. So he is pretty good against both sides of the plate. Why would you not want to use time to see if maybe this is a guy that the way they're talking seems like they're hinting towards, hey, we might stretch him out going into spring training to potentially start, which, by the way, they did this spring training. It went under the radar, but he did not make the opening day roster as this high-leverage arm. He made it as protection as a long reliever. So they clearly have seen this in the past. I just think it is more valuable for you to try and get some kind of answers potentially on, okay, we're going to try this. We're going to build him up here. What does it look like for the final 2 months? You're really only going to see about, 4 to 5 starts of him being built all the way up to the 90 pitch threshold, because it's going to take 3 or 4 to get up there. But I would want to at least see what the data points show us on, okay, can this guy potentially do it? It also gives him an idea of, okay, here's how I need to start preparing as a starter at the major league level. He gets to talk with Dusty and go through that process for the final 2 months of the season, and he can take whatever he learns from this experience in the final 2 months into the offseason as he prepares for what could potentially be year number 2 of you going to try and potentially try this experiment again. There's literally nothing to gain by starting Miles Mikolas for the final 2 months. And whether it is you DFA him or you put him in the bullpen, you've got to pay him no matter what.
Correct.
So why not pay him while also finding out answers on another arm in your system like Kyle Leahy? I don't get what I keep seeing people bring up like, oh, well, why would I do that now? Because I want some side of something to look at for him in the offseason of what this looks like. I'm gaining nothing by watching Miles Mikolas start every 4th day outside teams taking batting practice.
Yeah, I think the value for Leahy, and all of this is dependent upon him being fully right? Physically, if he feels like he can't do this right now, then don't. Like that's the big part of this. But if he feels as though he's comfortable and physically he's in a place where he can get to the place of, throwing 60. I don't think he's ever going to get to 90 this year pitches, but if he can throw like 75 at some point before the end of the year, that will allow him to get the feedback from hitters. And nothing is better than feedback from major league hitters on how does my stuff play, not the first time around, not even necessarily just the second time around, but potentially even the third time that you go through that order. That's when you start to really learn about your stuff. Palante can go through a lineup once. It's no problem. Palante getting through the lineup the second time and then the third time, and Palante getting around the league the second and the third time, that's where things start to get difficult on him because they get reads on him. They can read his stuff because he's got this funky delivery. It's completely over the top. It's like a javelin thrower almost. Like when you have that and you see it enough times, you get comfortable with it. And the at-bats start to look less uncomfortable, for lack of a better term. What does that look like for Leahy? I would like to have that information before I go into spring training. So that way I know, like, one of the things they're going to have to decide this offseason, what do I do with that spot in my rotation? Because right now you've got Sonny Gray most likely back, depending on what happens with the trade clause. But Sonny Gray, Matthew Liberatore, Michael McGreevy, Andre Palante. Those are 4 of my 5 spots in the rotation. I thought TK Roby could have been that 5th guy. Now he's not an option for you next year. All right, take him off the board. We don't know what Quinn Matthews' situation is going to be, but right now I'm kind of counting on him as that 6th starter for me. Liam Doyle at some point hopefully can be in the mix next year, but probably not by opening day. All right, I have a need right now for a 5th starter. I'd probably have to go out to the market as currently constructed to find that guy. That means this offseason, I'm paying $10 million for it. Mm-hmm. The way that you sell this to ownership is, sure, you're eating a few million bucks right now on a starter that should, in your opinion, be starting games. I could save you $10 million in the offseason if I find out Leahy's good to be a starter. We need that information now. Otherwise, we're going into the offseason with an unknown. I can't, if I'm in Chaim Bloom's shoes, go into the situation next year where I'm counting on Leahy to be a starter, find out in spring training he can't do it, and now I'm stuck. Because who's the fifth starter in that scenario? I'm rushing Quinn Matthews because I have no other options. There's nobody else in the system that's ready to do it. So I actually think it could end up saving them money down the line. And if you're selling it to ownership, selling it to the front office, that's probably the way that you go about it.
Yeah, and if you can go around that path, like you get to sell them on the idea of, hey, we're going to save some money by doing this, that is what is ultimately going to drive them, because it sounds like payroll is going down this year. And if you have to go out and spend $10 million on someone to come into this rotation, the other thing too is like there's no long play in that either. It is a stopgap option. And now maybe Kyle Leahy serves as that, but if Kyle Leahy works out as a starter, you're talking about another cost control arm for the next 4 to 5 years, compared to if you go to the market and sign somebody to serve as the fifth starter, say like Andrew Heaney, they signed him to like 1 year, anywhere between like $5 to $10 million. That's a 1 year play. You gain nothing from it. Maybe he pitches well and you get something for him at the trade deadline.
Exactly.
But this is a play like the Liberatore play. You get Liberatore in, you finally get him into the rotation, and you go, okay, he is finally starting to figure this out as a starter. Now we've got him under cost control for the next, whatever it is, 2 or 3 years till he hits the free agent process. This is what all the good organizations are doing. They are churning out their own cost control arms, and that's what Chaim did in Boston, by the way. You look at some of the arms you mentioned in the last segment about there's 5 position players on that roster. When you look at some of the arms that are still from that team in 2022, some of them were kind of guys that were kind of back and forth between starting / bullpen. Like Tanner Houck was one of those guys. They got a cup of coffee for Bayo when he first came up. Now he is a guy that's in their rotation. Cutter Crawford has been at times a swingman. He's mostly now more of a bullpen arm. But this is what he did in Boston, where they're taking these bullpen arm type guys and making them starters. And if it doesn't work out, you can put them right back in the bullpen and you're getting the same production that you've had.
Yeah, they've also done something today that I really like as well. They have picked up a gentleman by the name of Jorge Alcala. He is a relief pitcher who is going to be placed on the Cardinals' active 26-man roster. I only know that because they don't have an option. Like, literally, there are no options remaining for him. He does have another year of control. Big-time fastball, throws 97 miles per hour on average. He does not know where it is going, had huge command issues so far this season, and with the Boston Red Sox, he was traded to them in like June. He had been okay, but he had lost all of his command recently, and they're in the middle of a playoff race. They can't risk that. They need him to be better than what he had been in terms of his command. So Cardinals take a chance. If you're able to hone some of that in, he starts striking guys out the way that he had been over the last couple of seasons, and he is able to take down some of that walk rate. Last year, he had a 3.2 ERA in 58 innings for the Minnesota Twins. You get him back to being that version, that's a middle inning reliever that you're going to be paying $1.5 million to next year. You've got him under club control for another year. You started your offseason in August. That's what this is. This is an offseason signing that you get 2 months of information on before you get to the offseason. If it goes poorly, DFA. No harm, no foul. If it goes well, cool. You got an extra veteran reliever who's going to be 30 years old next year and throws 97 with strikeout stuff. Great. This is exactly the kind of thing that the Cardinals should be taking chances on the rest of the way. When you're out of it, this is one of the benefits. You're higher on the waiver wire, which means you get to claim more of these different players. And with the way that your roster is constructed right now, you have exactly one reliever that doesn't have options. You've got ultimate flexibility. Keep churning through these roster spots. Keep that churn going and keep giving yourself the chance of being able to find somebody that might be able to help you in 2026. All right, coming up next, I went into this, T-Bone, and tried to figure out where are the Cardinals lacking right now in their lineup, because the offense has been mostly putrid since, I don't know, about 50 games ago. It's been not very good recently. What is lacking? How do they compare right now to the contenders across Major League Baseball? I think I found something that would be of interest. We'll talk about that next here on the Redbird Report. Okay, T-Bone, if I told you, hey, the Cardinals are lacking in star power compared to the legitimate contenders across Major League Baseball, you wouldn't be surprised by that. I wouldn't be surprised by that, and none of our listening audience would be surprised by that. However, I went through and looked at among all of the legitimate contenders across Major League Baseball right now, the teams that are currently in the playoffs, what do they have at the top of their lineup that the Cardinals are missing? And the truth is, It's superstars. It's talent that is producing at a 30 to 40% above league average type of production. So let's start in the National League, just as an example of this. The Mets have Soto, Alonso, and Lindor. Soto and Alonso, both 40% above league average offensively this year. The Philadelphia Phillies, Harper, Schwarber, Turner. Harper and Schwarber, both 40% above league average or better this season offensively. How about the Cubs? Kyle Tucker, PCA, and Michael Busch. Two of those three are 40% above league average. The third, is PCA, who's one of the best defenders across Major League Baseball. He's 30% above league average offensively. The Dodgers, you got Freddie, Shohei, and Will Smith. Three of them are at least 40% above league average offensively. Two of them, 60% above league average offensively. The Padres have Machado and Tatis, both at least 30% above league average. That's the National League legit contenders who have stud offensive players. The Brewers are the outlier in this respect. They are a contender because they have unbelievable run suppression, and they do every other thing besides like hitting for superstar status power. Yeah. Everything else they do at a borderline elite level. And if you're curious, Churios is 17% above league average hitter this year. Yelich is 21% above league average. Those are their best dudes. That's the closest thing that I can find across Major League Baseball contenders.
And 17% is like Brendan Donovan, Alec Burleson this year.
Exactly. That's the closest thing I can find to what the Cardinals currently have among their roster. In the AL, the Blue Jays have Guerrero and Springer, both at least 40% above league average offensively. The Yankees have Judge and Grisham, at least 30% above league average offensively. The Red Sox have Anthony and Bregman, 30% above league average offensively. The Astros have Altuve and Paredes and Pena, 30% above league average. The Mariners have Raleigh and Arozarena, at least 30% above league average offensively. Here's the Cardinals' top four hitters this year and where they rank.
Oh, this is not going to be good.
Ivan Herrera, 148, that's 48% above league average. Wilson Contreras is 20% above league average. Burleson, 20% above league average. Donovan, 15% above league average offensively. They are lacking either one or two elite level hitters in their lineup right now. If you believe this is what Herrera is going to be long term, and I think it's open-ended on if he's going to be this good offensively long term. I think he's probably going to settle in closer to Contreras than where he's at currently, which is like Kyle Tucker. So if you think he's going to fall back to like a Contreras, they're missing two guys at the top of their order to compare to Soto, Alonso, Harper, Tucker, Schwarber, Freddie Freeman, Shohei, Tatis, Machado. These guys are leading their respective teams. Now, T-Bone, I've got the what they're missing part of this. The harder part is how do they acquire what they're missing? And I don't have the answer on that. That may be trades. It may be free agency. It may be you just have to wait for some of your young, hopefully superstar level position players coming through your system. We'll see on that. But that's the problem that they're lacking right now. Everybody else in Major League Baseball that's a contender has it, and you're lacking it at the top of your lineup.
Yeah, and I think if you asked them on kind of truth serum, I think their answer was going to be Walker and Weatherholt was hopefully going to be those guys. Maybe Herrera, I don't know where they are on Herrera from like 2 years ago. I don't know if they expected this from his bat. I think it's been almost a little bit of a surprise. They knew he could hit. I don't think they knew he could hit this well. I mean, think about it. They were in a playoff race last year, and they sent him down to work on catching, which he's not doing anymore. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's clear and obvious what they are missing. And for a team that's missing it, for a while they were able to hold their own. But they don't have the guy that you can rely on to come through in that big moment that you just fear, right? There's nobody in the Cardinals lineup that I think is going to have a pitcher shaking in his boots. Maybe Herrera will eventually become that guy, but I'm with you. They're going to have to find one to two of these guys, and the way they're going to have to do it is it's either draft and develop, and you know I don't know how much I would rely on that strategy, or you're going to have to go out and you're going to have to trade for him. Now, when I say trade for him, that could mean you go out there and in like some kind of trade in the offseason, you go out and acquire a guy that's in the minor leagues and you think he's going to be a star. Like some of those guys that you mentioned on that list, like Pete Crow Armstrong was acquired at the trade deadline when the Cubs moved on from Javi Baez in that deal. Yordan Alvarez, which we didn't mention because he's been injured, but he's a guy that would scare me when he comes up to the plate. That's a guy that was acquired like in some small deal with the LA Dodgers.
I think it was a reliever.
Yeah, and I can't even remember the reliever's name. It was just one of those small moves that you weren't expecting. You gave up a superstar in the process. Like, that's how they're going to have to do it. Or they're going to have to go back to their old model, which I don't know why they seem so obsessed with getting away from it. And when I say their old model, it's doing what they're doing right now, which is developing great complementary pieces. One thing they will have to fix to get back to this model is get back to the pitching pipeline. 100%. That's what helped get them Ozuna when they developed Alcantara and Gallen and made those guys trade assets. Same with like Luke Weaver, who they put in the Goldschmidt deal, Gomber, who they put in the Arenado deal. That's the one part that's lacking right now. But get back to that. You've always been good at developing the Brendan Donovan type players to where like Donovan came out of nowhere as a prospect. Lars Nootbaar came out of nowhere. And what do you know? They're good Major League Baseball players. And then you take those guys when you get a surplus of them and the next star becomes available, whoever it is that's maybe unhappy or a team says, you know what, this core's not working. Like I'll use this team as an example. I don't think this is happening, but we live in a theology as a podcast here. Gunnar Henderson of the Baltimore Orioles. If Baltimore in 2 years can't figure out their ish as they're going through it right now, that's the kind of organization that in the past will not pay guys. So what will they do when a player like that type gets close to free agency? They will trade him. They did it with Manny Machado. Will Gunnar Henderson become that next guy that becomes available? If you're the Cardinals, you want to be able to develop this pipeline of talent that maybe doesn't develop the star, but develops pieces that other teams are looking for that you can then take, package together, and go out and acquire a superstar because you've never been the homegrown type. The only one they've grown internally was Albert Pujols, and that was, as we've said in the past, almost like a luck of a draft pick because he was in the later rounds. Odds are you weren't going to hit on getting the best right-handed hitter of his generation when you pick him in the 12th round or whatever it was. Yep. So they've got to get back to their old model is the way that I would personally do it.
You could also argue Yachty, but that's another conversation for another day. Like I look back to the 2013 team, right? That's one of my favorite Cardinals teams just because of the way that it was constructed, because you didn't have the benefit of Albert Pujols on that roster, which is just a cheat code, right? It's unfair. His first 10 years in the major leagues, you could argue, is one of the best 10-year stretches of any player in the history of Major League Baseball. So now you look at the way that you're constructed in 2013, you bring in Carlos Beltran. You had already traded for and extended Matt Holliday. Those are two players that came from the outside that became like the core of the middle of your order. And then around that fulcrum, you're able to build with Matt Carpenter and Alan Craig and David Freese and John Jay. And you've already got Yachty in place, who had a really good season that year offensively as well. And so now you look at it and you're like, all right, we have filled out the roster with these complementary and really good pieces that are homegrown. But the core of the middle of our order is built around these guys that we got from other teams. There's nothing wrong with that, dude. Like, Freddie Freeman is from another team. Nobody in LA cares because he's awesome. They love watching him. Fernando Tatis Jr. technically was previously grown in a different organization. Manny Machado. That is not a homegrown player in San Diego. Nobody in San Diego cares about that because he is now theirs. They get the prime of his career. He gets to be a superstar for them. So this is something that does frustrate me a lot with the way that the Cardinals have been talking about this over the last really 12 months or so, I guess 14 months, is they seem to see themselves as something that they're really not. They have never been the Oakland Athletics of, if we get good, it has to be because of players that we had, that we grew internally, right? They're not even like the Atlanta Braves, this version of the Braves. They've never been that. They have always been a team that gets their stars from elsewhere. Even Ozzie Smith was acquired from elsewhere originally. So you look back over the last 40 years of the St. Louis Cardinals, almost all of their stars, for the most part, have been from other organizations. Even Waino was acquired via a trade.
Yep.
So I think that it is something where they're looking at themselves in the mirror and seeing something that's not actually there. And I do wonder how much of that is just them trying to sell something that they know doesn't actually exist, because they have to wait to get to the other side of this. So they need to get the superstar level talent. How do they get it? I don't know, man. They've got to change what they currently seem to believe is their model. And I don't know if that's in 26, 27, 28, but at some point within the next 3 to 4 years, they're going to have to put the foot back on the accelerator. And that is going to require spending in some kind of asset.
And you know what's funny is, like, as you were talking about that, of like them not seeing themselves, you talked about the other team, like just going at a glance, looking at all these other teams that we just talked about, like who their stars are, most of them have come externally. That goes to show you how freaking hard it is to go out there and even develop your own guys. Like, you look at even the Brewers, for example. The only one of their three that we talked about, Chourio, Yelich, and Contreras. Chourio was the only one that came from inside the organization. Yelich was a trade with the Marlins, and Contreras was a trade with the Braves in a 3-team trade. Like, everybody, for the most part, is finding their guys from outside the organization. The Mariners, Rowley was their own guy that they developed. Rosarena wasn't. He was ours. He came from us, then went to Tampa Bay, then went to Seattle. So
yeah, Mets got Soto from external. They got Lindor in a trade. Phillies got signed Harper. They signed Schwarber. They signed Turner. Cubs traded for Tucker, traded for PCA, traded for Bush as well.
And the other thing on this list,
all of these guys are coming from elsewhere.
Some of these external ones that you're referencing there are some they can't do. Like Soto, they can't make that move. And honestly, wouldn't give him that contract. Shohei, they can't do. But some of these they can do. Freddie Freeman's contract is not that bad. It's like 6 years, I think, like at 156. Like, they could have done that with Paul Goldschmidt. I think his contract extension was that. You look at a guy like Cody Bellinger, who's with the New York Yankees, who's kind of their guy right now. That's a contract that the St. Louis Cardinals could do. The Rosarena trade, when he was acquired from Seattle, you can give up some prospect capital and go do this. It's not like all of these are, well, we just couldn't do that deal. No, there are some that you can do. It's about evaluating the talent and seeing where you can go and take advantage of those older players, but still have it. Like Freddie Freeman, who was signed, I think, at like 32 years old, 33 years old. You could look at that guy and go, yeah, that guy's going to be good until about his late 30s. It's okay to take a gamble on that guy.
I would bring up the Isaac Paredes deal as one that I would look at. Not for Houston, but for the Chicago Cubs. Paredes could have been this year in Chicago, and it would have been a really good player for them to have. Paredes has been an all-star caliber player this year before getting hurt with the Houston Astros. He's 35% above league average. They made a deal at a deadline where they were aggressive, and they decided, you know what, we're going to go acquire this player. We think he's a distressed asset, and he's going to come here. He's going to be a valuable commodity for the Chicago Cubs. And then in the offseason, they saw that Kyle Tucker was available, and they took that asset, and they said, okay, you value this? We'll go ahead and make this move. And they included another top prospect in it. But Paredes has been a really good player this year for the Astros. Could the Cardinals go find their version of Isaac Paredes this offseason, where they acquire that for something that they no longer feel as though they need, and he takes it to another level while he's here in St. Louis? That's got to be their goal. Go out there, identify talent, and then maximize it while they're playing for you instead of allowing them to maximize that talent when they go on to play elsewhere. He's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Normally, this is the point of the podcast in which we start previewing what is coming up ahead for the Cardinals.
Who do we play? What do we got coming up?
There's no reason to do that this week. So we will talk to you guys next week on the Redbird Report. Shout out, as always, to our guy Zane, who has done a fantastic job on the video side of things. Thanks so much for listening. Please subscribe if you have not done so already. We'll talk to you guys next week here on the Redbird Report.
Find every episode of the Redbird Report with Brandon Kiley and Tanner Hendrickson on YouTube or at 101ESPN.com.